In the quaint Midwestern town where I, Elena Martinez, lived, life had a rhythm as predictable as the ticking of an old clock. But ever since my mother passed away, that rhythm had been disrupted by the uninvited intrusions of two people: my mother-in-law, Helen, and my sister-in-law, Rachel. They had a knack for appearing at my doorstep just when I craved solitude the most. "You know, Elena, it's quite rude to keep us waiting at the door," Helen would say, with a tone dripping with passive aggression. I could see Rachel smirking beside her, her eyes scanning my living room like a hawk. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting anyone," I'd reply, my voice strained with forced politeness. Their visits had become a dreaded routine. Each time they arrived, they expected to be entertained and catered to as if they were royalty, and I, a mere servant in my own house. "We're just here to keep you company, dear. You must be so lonely without your children," Helen would chide, settling herself comfortably on my couch. Rachel would follow suit, lounging as if she owned the place, and then would come the most irksome part. "Elena, why don't you order us some steaks? We can't have our visit without a proper meal," Rachel would suggest, her voice sweet yet commanding. "But it's almost 4 p.m., I would protest weakly. Helen would wave her hand dismissively. "Nonsense, dear. It's never too late for a good meal. And make sure it's from that expensive place downtown. We deserve a treat, don't we, Rachel?" As I begrudgingly placed the order, watching the numbers on the bill climb, I felt a mix of anger and helplessness. These steak dinners were bleeding me dry, yet I couldn't muster the courage to stand up to them. It was a financial strain I could ill afford, but Helen and Rachel seemed oblivious to my plight. What made it worse was my husband Michael's indifference. Whenever I tried to discuss the matter with him, his responses were dismissive at best. "They're family, Elena. It's just a few steaks. Don't make a big deal out of it," Michael would say, avoiding my gaze. "But it's every day, Michael. And it's not just about the money. They're taking advantage of our hospitality," I would argue, my frustration evident. "Elena, they mean well. You're overreacting," he would conclude, effectively shutting down any further discussion. This pattern continued for 2 long years. 2 years of unannounced visits, expensive meals, and a growing sense of resentment. It felt like I was trapped in a cycle with no escape. But little did I know the real storm was yet to come, a storm that would change everything. The routine continued, each day blending into the next with Helen and Rachel's unrelenting visits. However, one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my living room, Michael came home with a look on his face that spelled trouble. "Elena, we need to talk," he said, his voice unusually stern. Sensing the gravity in his tone, I braced myself. "What is it, Michael?" He took a deep breath and, without any preamble, dropped the bombshell. "My parents and Rachel's family are moving in with us next week. You need to clear out your room." I felt the room spin around me. "What? Michael, this is our home? You can't just decide that without discussing it with me." Michael's expression was cold, unyielding. "It's decided, Elena. They need a place to stay, and it's high time we do our part for the family." "But where am I supposed to go?" My voice cracked, a mix of disbelief and hurt swelling within me. "You figure it out. Maybe you can stay with a friend," he said dismissively. This was my family home, passed down to me from my parents. To be told I had no place in it was more than just an insult. It was a betrayal of the worst kind. I stood there, numb, as Michael continued. "You're always complaining about Helen and Rachel. This way you won't have to deal with them anymore." His words were like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. I realized then that the man standing before me was not the Michael I had married. He had become a stranger, one who valued his family over his wife. As Michael walked away, leaving me standing alone in the dimly lit room, a fire ignited within me. A fire of anger, yes, but more than that, a determination to stand up for myself. "I'll clear out the house," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "But not in the way you expect." Michael paused, turning back with a smirk. "I thought you'd put up more of a fight. But if you're being sensible for once, that's good." He didn't understand. He couldn't see the resolve that had taken hold in me. For years, I had been the dutiful wife, bending over backward to accommodate his and his family's whims. But not anymore. The next morning, as Michael left for his business trip, I took my first step towards freedom. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had found the night before. My voice was calm, my instructions clear. "Yes, I'd like to schedule a pickup for all my furniture and appliances," I said, a sense of empowerment growing with each word. "And I need it done before the end of this week." As I hung up the phone, a sense of exhilaration washed over me. It was the beginning of my revenge, a plan meticulously crafted to turn the tables on those who had wronged me. Michael thought he had won, but he was gravely mistaken. The house would be cleared out, yes, but it would be empty for him and his precious family. I was taking back control, one step at a time. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I coordinated with movers, arranged for the sale of furniture, and secretly packed my personal belongings. Every item that held sentimental value to me was carefully boxed up, ready to be transported to my new temporary refuge, my son's apartment in the city. As the movers worked, the house began to echo with the emptiness of its soon-to-be barren rooms. Each piece of furniture that left the house felt like shedding a layer of the life I had built here, but with it, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The day before Michael's return, the house stood empty, a hollow shell of its former warmth. I took one last look around, memories flashing through my mind, of laughter, of tears, of moments cherished and now left behind. But this was no time for nostalgia. It was time for retribution. I left a note on the barren kitchen counter, its words succinct. "Michael, as per your request, I have cleared out the house. Good luck with your new living arrangements. Elena." With that, I turned my back on the life I had known and headed to the city, a mix of apprehension and excitement for what lay ahead. Upon arriving at my son's apartment, his welcome was warm but tinged with concern. "Mom, are you sure about this?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "I've never been more certain," I replied, my resolve unwavering. That evening, as anticipated, my phone rang. It was Michael, his voice a cocktail of confusion and rage. "Elena, what the hell have you done? The house is empty." "Yes, Michael, you said to clear out my room. I took it to mean the entire house," I responded coolly. "That's not what I meant, and you know it. Where are you? What about all our stuff?" "I've taken what's mine. The rest is for you to figure out," I said, a sense of satisfaction creeping into my voice. "You can't do this to me, to us." Michael's voice cracked with desperation. "Funny, I thought the same when you decided to kick me out of my own house," I retorted. The line went silent for a moment before Michael hung up. I knew this was just the beginning, but it was a start to taking back my life and dignity. Sitting in the quiet of my son's apartment, I realized this was more than just revenge. It was a statement that I was no longer the Elena who would be walked over and disregarded. This was a new chapter, one where I would be the author of my own story. The next morning, the gray light of dawn filtered through the curtains of my son's apartment, bringing with it a sense of anticipation. My phone rang, the caller ID flashing Michael's name. I answered, bracing myself for the onslaught. "Elena, you've got to come back. This is madness." Michael's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. "I'm not coming back, Michael. You made it clear I wasn't wanted," I replied, my voice steady. "You can't just sell all our things and leave. What about us? What about our marriage?" The desperation in his voice was palpable. "Us? Our marriage?" I scoffed. "That ended when you chose your family over me in my own home." There was silence on the other end. I knew I had hit a nerve. It was then that I revealed the full extent of my actions. "Also, Michael, I've started the process of selling the house. As you so eloquently put it, it doesn't matter who it originally belonged to." "You can't do that, Elena. It's my home, too." His voice was rising in panic now. "Not anymore, Michael. And since you're so concerned about family, I'm sure Helen and Rachel can help you find a new place." The line went dead. I knew this wasn't the end of it, but for the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. Later that day, Rachel called, her voice dripping with venom. "You backstabbing witch, how could you do this to us? Where are we supposed to go?" "The same place you expected me to go," I replied coldly. "You and Helen were so eager to take over my home. I'm sure you can figure something out." "You'll pay for this, Elena. You think you're so clever, but you're nothing without us," Rachel hissed before hanging up. Their threats and pleas continued over the next few days, but I remained resolute. I had spent too many years being manipulated and undermined. It was time they faced the consequences of their actions. As I started my new job in the city, a sense of liberation enveloped me. I was no longer the doormat Elena, but a woman who stood up for herself. The drama and chaos of my past life felt like a distant memory as I embraced this new chapter. In the end, my revenge wasn't just about emptying a house or selling off property. It was about reclaiming my self-worth and dignity. Michael, Helen, and Rachel had underestimated me for the last time. Now, they were left to deal with the mess they had created, while I finally moved forward, free from their toxic grasp. Weeks turned into months, and my life in the city started to take on a rhythm of its own. The calls from Michael, Helen, and Rachel became less frequent, their voices losing the battle against my newfound resolve. I had started to build a life for myself, one that was free from their manipulation and control. One afternoon, as I sat in my modest but cozy apartment, my lawyer called with news. "Elena, the court has finalized your divorce, and the house, it's legally yours." Michael's claim was denied. A wave of relief washed over me. This was more than just a legal victory. It was vindication. It was proof that I had been right to stand up for myself, to fight back against the injustice that had been thrust upon me. But how? That house is all I have. Michael's incredulous voice echoed through the phone later that day. "You made your choices, Michael. You chose your family over your wife. Now you live with those choices," I said, the finality in my voice mirroring the closure I felt inside. "But Elena, where will I go?" "I have nothing," he pleaded. "That's not my concern anymore, Michael. You should have thought of that before," I replied before hanging up. In the weeks that followed, rumors reached me through friends still living in my hometown. Michael, Helen, and Rachel had been forced to move into a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. Their once comfortable lives had become a daily struggle, a stark contrast to the luxury they had once taken for granted. I heard about Helen and Rachel's constant bickering, their relationship strained under the weight of their new reality. Michael, it seemed, had taken to gambling, hoping to win back some of their lost fortune, but only sinking deeper into despair. These stories, once a source of pain, now seemed distant, almost foreign. I had moved on, building a life that was mine and mine alone. My job in the city was fulfilling, and my evenings were spent exploring my newfound freedom. One day, as I walked through the bustling city streets, I bumped into Anthony, a friend from my hometown who had also moved to the city. We shared our stories, finding solace in our mutual experiences. "Elena, it's incredible how much you've changed. You're like a completely different person," Anthony said, admiration in his eyes. "I had to change, Anthony. It was the only way to save myself," I replied, a smile playing on my lips. As we talked, I realized that Anthony and I had more in common than our past. We both had been through trials that had shaped us, made us stronger. And in that strength, we found a connection. Life had taken me on a journey I never expected. I had faced my fears, stood up to those who had wronged me, and come out stronger on the other side. My story was one of transformation, of a woman who reclaimed her life from the ashes of her past. And as I looked ahead, I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready for it. With my head held high and my spirit unbroken, I stepped forward into my new life, a life where I was the author of my own destiny. The shattering of glass pierced the silence of our living room. A framed photo lay smashed on the hardwood floor, the shards of glass glinting like tiny daggers. My hands trembled as I stared at the intruder standing before me, a woman clutching the hand of a young boy, his eyes wide with confusion. Richard, my husband of 23 years, stepped forward, his face ashen. "Dana, this is Jenna, and Lucas. They're my family, too." The words hung in the air, a suffocating weight pressing against my chest. I opened my mouth, but no sound escaped. How could this be happening? My perfect life, the life I had fought so hard to build, was crumbling before my eyes. "You have another family?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "How could you do this to us?" Richard's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine. "I'm sorry, Dana. I never meant for it to go this far." Jenna shifted uncomfortably, her grip on Lucas tightening. "Richard told me you knew about us. He said you were okay with the arrangement." My heart pounded in my ears as I struggled to comprehend the depth of his deception. Anger surged through me, burning away the shock. "You lied to her, too? You're a coward, Richard, a coward and a liar." Amelia, our 22-year-old daughter, emerged from her bedroom, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, what's going on?" Before I could respond, Richard stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Amelia, honey, I have something to tell you." "Save it," I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. "You've done enough damage. Get out of our house, Richard. Get out and never come back." Amelia's brow furrowed, and she looked from me to Richard, her gaze finally settling on Jenna and the child. Understanding dawned on her face, and her expression hardened. "You sick bastard," she spat, her words dripping with venom. Richard flinched as if struck. "Amelia, please, let me explain." "No," I shouted, my voice raw. "You don't get to explain anything. You've been living a lie, and now the truth is out. You made your choices, Richard, and now you have to face the consequences." Jenna's grip on Lucas loosened, and she took a tentative step forward. "Dana, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Just go. Take your son and get out of my house. I don't want to see either of you ever again." Tears welled in Jenna's eyes, but she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She turned and fled, Lucas trailing behind her, casting one last bewildered glance over his shoulder. Richard stood motionless, his face a mask of anguish. "Dana, please, we can work through this. I love you." I shook my head, my heart shattering with each word. "No, Richard, you lost the right to love me the moment you betrayed our family. Our marriage is over." As the weight of my words settled over us, a heavy silence descended. In that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The life I had known, the love I had cherished, was gone, shattered like the broken frame on the floor. The weeks following Richard's departure were a blur. Amelia and I existed in a state of numb disbelief, the weight of his betrayal suffocating us with each passing day. We tried to resume our normal routines, but the empty spaces he left behind served as constant reminders of the life we had lost. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, staring vacantly at a stack of unpaid bills, Amelia emerged from her room, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice quivering with barely contained anger. I looked up, my heart sinking at the expression on her face. "What is it, honey?" Amelia tossed a thick manila envelope onto the table, scattering the bills. "I found this in Dad's office. It's everything. Bank statements, credit card receipts, proof of his double life." I reached for the envelope with trembling hands, dread coiling in my stomach. As I rifled through the contents, a sickening realization dawned on me. Richard hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been embezzling from his company, siphoning funds to support his secret family. "That bastard," Amelia spat, her fists clenched at her sides. "He's been lying to us for years, Mom. He's been stealing, cheating, and God knows what else." I felt bile rise in my throat as the full extent of Richard's deception became clear. "How could he do this to us?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Amelia's expression hardened, her eyes blazing with determination. "He's going to pay for this, Mom. We're going to make sure he pays." I stared at her, uncertainty gnawing at me. "What are you saying, Amelia?" She leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "I'm saying we expose him for the lying, thieving scumbag he is. We take all this evidence to his company, to the police. We burn his life to the ground, just like he did to ours." A part of me recoiled at the thought of such vengeance, but another, darker part couldn't deny the appeal of seeing Richard suffer the consequences of his actions. "What about Jenna and the kid?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They're caught up in this, too." Amelia's expression softened, just for a moment. "We'll reach out to Jenna. Maybe she'll see reason and help us take him down." I nodded slowly, my mind whirling with 1,000 different thoughts and emotions. "Okay," I said finally, my resolve hardening. "We'll do it. We'll make him pay for what he's done." Amelia's grim smile sent a shiver down my spine. "Good. It's time we showed that lying piece of garbage what happens when you mess with the Whitaker women." As she turned and stalked back to her room, I couldn't help but wonder if we were embarking on a path we might one day regret. But in that moment, all I could feel was a burning desire for retribution. A need to see Richard suffer as we had suffered, to make him pay for the lies that had shattered our lives. In the days that followed, I found myself standing at a crossroads, torn between the desire for vengeance and the fear of diving headlong into a path of destruction. As I pored over the evidence Amelia had uncovered, The weight of Richard's betrayal threatened to crush me. Amelia, however, remained resolute, her determination unwavering. "We can't let him get away with this, Mom," she insisted, her voice laced with urgency. "He needs to face the consequences of his actions." I nodded numbly, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. A part of me longed to see Richard suffer, to watch as his carefully constructed facade crumbled around him. But another part, the part that still clung to the remnants of the love I once felt, recoiled at the thought of such vindictiveness. "What if we go too far?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if we become the monsters we're trying to destroy?" Amelia's expression softened, and she reached across the table to grip my hand. "Mom, we're not the ones who created this mess. We're just fighting to reclaim what's ours, our dignity, our self-respect. Richard is the one who chose to lie and cheat. He's the monster here." Her words resonated deep within me, igniting a spark of determination that had been flickering dangerously close to extinguishment. She was right. Richard had brought this upon himself, and it was time he faced the music. "You're right," I said, squeezing her hand. "We can't let him get away with this. We need to take him down, once and for all." Amelia's eyes gleamed with a mixture of relief and anticipation. "Good, then let's get to work." Over the next few days, we pored over the evidence, meticulously piecing together a timeline of Richard's deceit. Bank statements, credit card receipts, and damning emails painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and selfishness, willing to sacrifice everything, including his family, for his own desires. As we worked, I could feel the anger simmering within me, a slow burn that threatened to consume me if left unchecked. Each new revelation, each fresh betrayal, stoked the flames of my fury until I could barely contain the rage that coursed through my veins. Finally, we had everything we needed, a damning dossier of Richard's misdeeds, a veritable mountain of evidence that would bury him beneath the weight of his own lies. "It's time," Amelia said, her voice steely with determination. "Time to make that bastard pay." I nodded, my jaw clenched tight. Yes, it's time to end this, once and for all. As we stood there, united in our quest for retribution, I knew there was no turning back. Richard had made his choices, and now he would face the consequences, no matter how steep the price. With our dossier of evidence against Richard firmly in hand, Amelia and I knew it was time to take action. We couldn't move forward alone, not if we wanted to ensure Richard faced the full weight of his crimes. "We need help," Amelia said grimly, her fingers drumming against the tabletop. "Legal help." I nodded, my stomach churning with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. "You're right. We'll need an attorney, someone who can navigate the legal system and make sure Richard can't wriggle his way out of this." Amelia's eyes narrowed, her jaw set in a hard line. "I know just the person." A few days later, we found ourselves seated across from Samantha Kendrick, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for taking on high-profile cases. As we laid out the evidence before her, her expression remained inscrutable, betraying none of the shock or disgust we had expected. "This is quite a dossier," she said at last, her voice calm and measured. "If even half of these allegations are true, your husband is in deep trouble." Amelia leaned forward, her eyes blazing with intensity. "Every single word is true, Miss Kendrick. That lying, cheating scumbag has been deceiving us for years, stealing from his company to fund his double life." Samantha held up a hand, silencing Amelia's outburst. "I believe you, Miss Whitaker. But belief alone won't be enough to convict your husband. We'll need concrete evidence, a paper trail that leaves no doubt as to his guilt." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "We understand. What do you need from us?" Over the next few weeks, Samantha guided us through the process of collecting additional evidence, ensuring that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Her meticulous attention to detail was both reassuring and unsettling, a constant reminder of the gravity of the situation we found ourselves in. As our case against Richard grew stronger, Amelia and I faced another hurdle, the question of what to do about Jenna and her son, Lucas. They were collateral damage in Richard's web of lies, innocent victims caught up in his selfish scheme. "We should reach out to her," Amelia said one evening, her voice laced with a surprising note of compassion. "She might be willing to help us, especially if it means protecting Lucas." I hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. What if she's loyal to Richard? What if she refuses to cooperate? Amelia's expression hardened. Then we'll have to find another way. But we owe it to ourselves and to her to at least try. In the end, Jenna proved to be an unexpected ally, her anger and hurt at Richard's deception eclipsing any lingering loyalty she might have felt. She provided us with a wealth of information, corroborating our evidence and filling in the gaps in Richard's carefully constructed lies. As the final pieces fell into place, a sense of grim determination settled over us. We had done everything in our power to ensure that Richard would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful or devastating they might be. "It's time," Samantha said, her voice quiet but resolute. "Time to bring him down." Amelia and I exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between us. There was no turning back now. The wheels of justice had been set in motion, and Richard's world was about to come crashing down around him. As the days ticked by, a sense of foreboding settled over our household. Despite our meticulous preparations, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. What if Richard somehow managed to evade justice? What if, after everything we'd been through, he still found a way to escape the consequences of his actions? Amelia, ever the voice of reason, brushed aside my concerns with a wave of her hand. "He's not getting away this time, Mom. We've got him dead to rights." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was as if a storm was brewing on the horizon, and we were caught in its inexorable path. My fears were confirmed one evening when Samantha called, her usually unflappable demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency. "We may have a problem," she said without preamble. "I've received word that your husband is planning to flee the country." The news hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing the breath from my lungs. "What? When? How?" Samantha's voice was grim. "From what my sources tell me, he's been liquidating assets and making arrangements to leave the country within the next few days. He's taking Jenna and the boy with him." Anger surged through me, hot and pulsing. The coward was running, trying to escape the consequences of his actions just as we were closing in. "That lying, spineless bastard," Amelia snarled, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. "He's not getting away that easily." I drew in a shaky breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "What do we do, Samantha? How do we stop him?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture Samantha weighing her options. "We move forward with our plan, but we do it now, before he has a chance to disappear. We confront him, hit him with everything we've got, the evidence, the charges, all of it. We take away his ability to run." Amelia nodded, her jaw set in a hard line. "Let's do it. I'll call Jenna, make sure she's on board." As I hung up the phone, a sense of determination washed over me. We were so close, so tantalizingly close to seeing Richard face the consequences of his actions. I couldn't, let him wriggle free, not after everything he'd put us through. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as we finalized our plans. Jenna, her loyalty to Richard long since evaporated, agreed to testify against him, providing a damning first-hand account of his deception and manipulation. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. As we made our way to Richard's office, the weight of the moment pressed down upon us like a physical force. This was it. The culmination of weeks of planning, of pain and anger, and a burning desire for justice. Samantha squeezed my arm reassuringly. "It's going to be okay," she murmured. "We've got this." I nodded, forcing a tight smile. "I know. It's time for Richard to face the music." As we stepped into the building, I could feel the storm gathering around us, the winds of change whipping at our backs. There was no turning back now. The only way out was through, and I was determined to see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was palpable as we strode into Richard's office, our footsteps echoing like thunderclaps in the hushed stillness. Samantha took the lead, her shoulders squared and her gaze unwavering, while Amelia and I flanked her on either side, our faces set in grim determination. Richard looked up from his desk, his expression morphing from surprise to confusion to outright panic as he registered our presence. "Dana? Amelia? What's going on?" Before he could say another word, Samantha stepped forward, brandishing a thick manila envelope. "Richard Whittaker, you're under investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and adultery." The color drained from Richard's face as the weight of Samantha's words sank in. "What?" That's absurd. You can't possibly believe these ridiculous accusations. Amelia's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Cut the crap, Dad. We know everything. The lies, the cheating, the secret family. It's all over. Richard's eyes darted back and forth, his mind clearly racing to concoct some new web of deception. Jenna told you, didn't she? That lying little bee? Don't you dare! I cut him off, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Don't you dare try to pin this on Jenna or anyone else. This is your doing, Richard. Your lies, your betrayal. Samantha stepped forward again, her expression impassive. We have irrefutable evidence of your misdeeds, Mr. Whitaker. Bank statements, financial records, eyewitness testimony, all of it points to a pattern of embezzlement and fraud stretching back years. Richard's face contorted in a snarl of rage. You think you can take me down with some flimsy evidence and trumped-up charges? I'll bury you all in lawsuits, you hear me? This isn't over, not by a long shot. Amelia's laughter was cold and derisive. Keep telling yourself that, Dad. Your days of lying and cheating are over. You're finished. As if on cue, the door to Richard's office burst open, and a trio of stern-faced security guards entered, flanked by 2 police officers. Richard Whitaker, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The world seemed to slow as the officers approached, their movements deliberate and inexorable. Richard's mask of bravado crumbled, his eyes widening in panic as the gravity of the situation finally sank in. No, wait, you don't understand, he sputtered, his hands raised in a futile gesture of surrender. This is all a mistake. Dana, please, you have to believe me. But his pleas fell on deaf ears as the officers seized him, roughly spinning him around and snapping the handcuffs into place. As they led him away, his gaze met mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of the man I had once loved, the man who had promised to cherish and protect me, the man who had sworn to love me until the end of time. Then the moment passed, and all I saw was a stranger, a man consumed by greed and selfishness, a man who had sacrificed everything for his own twisted desires. And in that instant, I knew that the Richard what had loved was gone, lost forever in the tangled web of his own lies. As the door swung shut behind him, a profound silence descended upon the room, broken only by the faint sound of Amelia's ragged breathing. We had done it. We had brought Richard Whitaker to his knees, exposed his lies for the world to see. But even as a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me, I couldn't help but wonder if the price we had paid was too high. Had our quest for vengeance cost us more than we could ever hope to regain? Only time would tell. In the aftermath of Richard's arrest, a surreal calm settled over our lives. After the whirlwind of emotions and the relentless pursuit of justice, the sudden stillness felt almost suffocating. Amelia and I sat in silence, staring at the now empty space where Richard's presence had once loomed large. It was as if a weight had been lifted from our shoulders, but in its place lingered a hollow ache, the echoes of a life we had once known, now forever altered. "Do you think it was worth it?" Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I considered her question, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle with no clear solution. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "Part of me feels like we did the right thing, that he got what he deserved, but another part—" My voice trailed off, the words catching in my throat. Amelia nodded, her expression somber. "Yeah, I know what you mean." In the days that followed, we learned the full extent of Richard's betrayal. The embezzlement charges alone were staggering, with evidence suggesting he had siphoned off hundreds of thousands of dollars from his company over the years. But it was the personal revelations that cut deepest. The secret bank accounts, the hidden assets, the paper trail of lies that stretched back nearly a decade. Jenna, it seemed, had been just one in a long line of mistresses, a mere footnote in Richard's sordid chronicle of infidelity. And poor Lucas, that innocent child caught in the crossfire of his father's selfish actions, was left to pick up the pieces of a life he had never asked for. As the media frenzy swirled around us, Amelia and I retreated into ourselves, seeking solace in the quiet moments away from the prying eyes and endless questions. We had sacrificed so much in our pursuit of vengeance, and now that the dust had settled, we were left to confront the consequences of our choices. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Jenna standing on the doorstep, her eyes rimmed with tears. "Dana," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." I blinked, taken aback by her unexpected gratitude. "Jenna, I don't know what to say." She shook her head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You gave me the strength to break free, to see Richard for the monster he truly is. I'll never be able to repay that debt." As she turned to leave, I found my voice once more. "Jenna, wait." She paused, her eyes questioning. "What will you do now?" I asked. "With Lucas, I mean?" Jenna's expression hardened, a steely resolve settling over her features. "I'll raise him to be a better man than his father, to know the value of honesty, loyalty, and integrity. Richard may have given him life, but I'll make sure he never inherits his father's sins." With those words, she was gone, disappearing into the gathering dusk as abruptly as she had arrived. As I watched her retreating figure, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the lingering sadness and regret. Perhaps in the end our quest for vengeance had achieved something greater than mere retribution. Perhaps, by exposing Richard's lies and holding him accountable, we had created a ripple effect, a chance for others like Jenna and Lucas to break free from the chains of his deception and forge a better path forward. As the last rays of sunlight faded, casting long shadows across the room, I realized that our journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long and arduous, paved with difficult choices and painful realizations. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to believe that we might just make it through. Battered and bruised, perhaps, but stronger for having weathered the storm. The weeks following Richard's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and change. As the legal proceedings ground on, Amelia and I found ourselves thrust into the harsh glare of the media spotlight, our private lives suddenly laid bare for the world to dissect and analyze. Through it all, we clung to each other, a united front against the storm of scrutiny and judgment that seemed to rage endlessly around us. Samantha, our steadfast ally, guided us through the legal quagmire, her unwavering presence a constant source of strength and support. "It won't be easy," she warned us, her expression grave. "Richard's lawyers will fight tooth and nail to discredit you, to paint you as vindictive and irrational. You need to be prepared for that." Amelia's jaw clenched, her eyes burning with a fierce determination. "Let them try. We have the truth on our side, and that's all that matters." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the weight of our decision began to take its toll. The sleepless nights, the endless questioning, the constant reminder of the life we had lost, it all threatened to crush us beneath its unbearable weight. But through it all, we persevered, buoyed by an unshakable belief that we had done the right thing. Richard's web of lies had been unraveled, his carefully constructed facade torn down brick by brick. He would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how long or arduous the road ahead might be. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the day of reckoning arrived. Richard, his once confident demeanor replaced by a pallid, haunted expression, stood before the judge, his fate hanging in the balance. As the charges were read aloud, embezzlement, fraud, adultery, a hush fell over the courtroom. Even the most seasoned journalists and legal experts seemed taken aback by the sheer magnitude of his misdeeds. Amelia and I sat in the front row, our hands clasped together in a silent show of solidarity. Jenna was there too, her eyes fixed on Richard with a mixture of anger and pity. When the verdict was finally announced, guilty on all counts, a collective gasp rippled through the room. Richard's shoulders slumped, his head bowing in defeat as the weight of his sins finally came crashing down upon him. In the aftermath, as the media circus swirled around us once more, Amelia and I found ourselves clinging to each other, tears of relief and sorrow mingling on our cheeks. "It's over," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's finally over." I nodded, my throat constricted by a torrent of conflicting emotions. The road ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. In the days and weeks that followed, we began to piece our lives back together, one fragile step at a time. Jenna, her custody of Lucas secured, reached out to us, and an unlikely bond of understanding began to form. We were survivors, united by the scars of Richard's betrayal, but determined to forge a new path forward. As for Richard, his fate was sealed. A lengthy prison sentence, his once promising future reduced to a mere footnote in the annals of his own hubris and greed. But even as the world around us moved on, the echoes of our ordeal lingered, a constant reminder of the price we had paid for justice. The road to healing would be long and arduous, paved with difficult choices and painful realizations. Yet as I stood on the precipice of this new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a belief that, no matter how dark the night might seem, the dawn would eventually break, ushering in a new era of peace and redemption. For in the end, that was the true legacy of our quest for vengeance. Not the destruction of one man, but the reclamation of our own strength, our own resilience, our own indomitable spirit. And as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united in our determination to forge a brighter future, one built on the ashes of the past, but rising ever higher toward the promise of a new dawn. The text message glowed accusingly on Derek's phone screen. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again soon. X. Alex." My heart lurched into my throat as I stared at the provocative words, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. "Who the hell is Alex?" I asked, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Derek glanced up from his laptop, his handsome face a mask of innocence. "What are you talking about?" I thrust the phone at him. "Don't play dumb with me. Who is she and why is she sending you flirty texts in the middle of the night?" He barely looked at the screen before tossing the phone aside with an eye roll. "Relax, Cora. It's just a work thing. Alex is a colleague. At 1 a.m., talking about how amazing tonight was?" Hot fury roiled through me. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" "Believe what you want," he said coolly, turning back to his computer. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I snatched the phone up again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through more messages. Each one was like a knife blade to the heart. Inside jokes, winky faces, references to clandestine meetings. The evidence of my husband's betrayal mounted before my very eyes. "A year," I whispered, horror dawning as I pieced together the timeline. "These go back an entire year. How could you?" His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't look up. "You're being ridiculous. I'm not having this conversation." "No, we are definitely having this conversation." I grabbed his laptop and slammed it shut. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, waving the phone in his face. "Explain this, Derek. Explain to me how your coworker is sending you texts about secret hookups and lacy red lingerie. Tell me this isn't what it looks like." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his face unreadable. Then he slowly stood up, towering over me. "You want the truth?" His voice was low and dangerous. "Fine. Yes, Alex and I are sleeping together, have been for months. And you know what? I don't regret a damn thing." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "How could you?" I choked out. "After everything we've been through together, how could you throw it all away like this?" He barked a humorless laugh. "Don't act so high and mighty, Cora. Our marriage has been a sham for years. You're always working, always nagging me, never giving me a moment's peace. With Alex, I can actually breathe." Tears blurred my vision as his cruel words carved me hollow. I wanted to scream, to rage at him, to throw something, but I felt paralyzed, gutted, like he had reached in and ripped out everything that mattered. "I think you should go," I finally managed to whisper. "Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." He smirked, grabbing his keys off the counter. "Best idea you've had in a long time. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him with a boom of finality. I sank to the floor, buried my head in my hands, and let the floodgates burst open. Sobs racked my body as the perfect life I thought I had shattered around me like broken glass. How had it come to this? When did my marriage, my whole world, start crumbling without me even realizing it? The questions swirled in my mind, sharp and relentless. But one thing crystallized through the haze of anguish and fury. Derek would pay for this betrayal. If it was the last thing I did, I would make him regret the day he broke our vows and shattered my heart. This was only the beginning. The next morning I woke up with puffy eyes and a throbbing headache, the remnants of a sleepless night spent alternating between crying and seething. Derek's side of the bed was cold and empty, a stark reminder of the bombshell he had dropped on our marriage. I dragged myself out of bed and into the shower, letting the scalding water wash away the tears and the lingering scent of Derek's cologne. As I stood under the spray, a steely resolve settled over me. I refused to be the victim in this story. It was time to take action. My first call was to Lena, my ride-or-die best friend since college. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Cora, it's barely 7 a.m. This better be good. Derek's cheating on me," I said flatly. "I found the text last night. It's been going on for a year." Silence stretched across the line for a beat, then Lena exploded. "That slimy lying snake! I'll kill him. I'll rip him limb from limb with my bare hands." Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. Lena's loyalty was fierce and unwavering. "I need you to help me dig up dirt on him and his mistress. This is war, and I intend to win it." "Consider it done," Lena said grimly. "I've got your back, always. That scumbag picked the wrong woman to screw over." We spent the morning huddled over our laptops and phones, piecing together the sordid details of Derek's affair. Lena worked her social media magic, scouring profiles and timelines for incriminating evidence. I hacked into Derek's email, my stomach turning as I scrolled through months of explicit messages and hotel reservations. The picture that emerged was even worse than I had imagined. Alexis Reed, a leggy blonde, 10 years Derek's junior, worked as a junior associate at his law firm. Their affair had started as flirty banter over happy-hour drinks and quickly escalated into clandestine hookups in seedy motels and weekend getaways disguised as business trips. "That snake," Lena hissed as we pored over the damning evidence. "He's been living a double life this whole time, betraying you at every turn." I nodded grimly, a cold fury crystallizing in my veins. "And now it's time to make him pay." We were deep in plotting mode when the front door slammed light, announcing Derek's return. He sauntered into the kitchen, his hair mussed and his shirt wrinkled. The stench of stale perfume clung to him like a second skin. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in," I said icily, crossing my arms. "Have a good night with your mistress?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't start, Cora. I told you it's not what you think." "Oh, so you didn't spend the night screwing your perky little secretary?" "The receipts beg to differ." I threw a stack of printed emails onto the counter. They fanned out like a dirty deck of cards, spelling out his betrayal in black and white. Derek blanched, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. "Where did you get those?" "You had no right." "I had every right," I snarled, slamming my hand down on the counter. "I'm your wife, Derek. Or did you forget that when you were shacking up with your office slut?" His face twisted with rage. "Watch your mouth? You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I shot back. "Sneaking around behind my back, funneling money into a secret account, planning a new life with her. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" For a moment, he looked almost guilty, but then his eyes hardened and he straightened up, squaring his shoulders. "You know what? Fine. You caught me. But if you were half the wife Alexis is, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." His words sliced through me like razors, but I refused to let the pain show on my face. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "Get out," I said quietly, deadly calm. "Get out of my house and my life. I'll be seeing you in court." The slamming of the front door echoed through the house like a gunshot, punctuating Derek's exit. I stood in the kitchen, my heart racing and my hands shaking with a toxic cocktail of fury and adrenaline. Lena placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked gently. I shook my head, blinking back the hot tears that threatened to spill over. "No, but I will be, once I make that bastard pay for what he's done." We spent the rest of the day in full revenge mode, combing through the evidence we'd gathered and crafting a meticulous plan to expose Derek's misdeeds. Lena suggested hiring a private investigator to dig up even more dirt, but I balked at the idea of inviting a stranger into this personal hell. "I can do it myself," I insisted, my jaw set with determination. "I need to be the one to take him down, to show him that he messed with the wrong woman." Lena nodded, her eyes glinting with a fierce loyalty. "Just be careful, Cor. Derek's a snake, but he's a smart one. Don't underestimate him." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Derek. "We need to talk. I'm coming over." I showed Lena the message, my lip curling in disgust. Speak of the devil, he probably wants to try and smooth things over, play the victim card. Don't let him, Lena warned. He'll twist everything around and make you doubt yourself. Stand your ground. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Don't worry, I'm done falling for his lies. Half an hour later, Derek walked through the door, his expression a carefully crafted mask of contrition. Cora, baby, I'm so sorry, he started, reaching for me. I never meant to hurt you. I recoiled from his touch, crossing my arms defensively. Spare me the bullshit, Derek. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. His eyes flashed with irritation before he quickly smoothed his features back into a look of wounded sincerity. That's not true. I love you, Cora. What happened with Alexis? It was a mistake. A stupid, reckless mistake. A harsh laugh escaped my throat. A mistake? A year-long affair with your secretary is a mistake? Draining our savings account to buy her expensive gifts and fancy vacations is a mistake? His face paled as he realized the extent of what I knew. Have you been spying on me? I didn't have to, I spat. You weren't exactly subtle about it. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the mysterious charges on our credit card bill? The late nights at the office that never seemed to result in any actual work getting done? Derek dragged a hand over his face, his mask slipping to reveal a hint of the ugly anger lurking beneath. You're being irrational. It wasn't like that. Alexis and I, we have a connection. She understands me in a way you never could. White-hot rage surged through my veins. Don't you dare try to justify this. There is no excuse for what you've done. You betrayed me, our marriage, everything we built together. Oh, please, he scoffed. Our marriage has been a joke for years. You're always nagging me, always on my case about every little thing. It's exhausting. At least Alexis appreciates me. I reeled back as if he had slapped me, my heart shattering into a million jagged pieces. Get out, I whispered, my voice deadly calm. Get out of my house and don't come back. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. A flicker of fear crossed his face before it twisted into an ugly sneer. Fine. Have it your way, but don't think for a second that you're going to come out on top here. I'll bury you in court. As the door slammed behind him for the second time that day, I collapsed onto the couch, as my entire body shaking with a potent mix of heartbreak and fury. The gloves were off now. Derek wanted to play dirty? Fine, could play dirty too. And I'd make damn sure I was the one left standing when the dust settled. The next few days passed in a blur of secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, and careful strategizing. While Derek swanned around town with his mistress, flaunting their affair like a badge of honor, I quietly laid the groundwork for his downfall. My first unexpected ally came in the form of Elise, Derek's older sister. She showed up on my doorstep unannounced one evening, her face lined with concern. I heard about what happened, she said without preamble as I let her in. I'm so sorry, Cora. My brother is a fool. I blinked in surprise, thrown off balance by her blunt words. Elise and I had always had a cordial relationship, but we weren't particularly close. Thanks, I managed. That means a lot. She fixed me with a piercing stare, her eyes so like Derek's that it made my heart ache. I'm not here just to offer condolences. I want to help you nail the bastard to the wall. A startled laugh escaped my lips. I'm sorry, what? Elise leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. Derek has always been a selfish prick, even when we were kids. I've watched him charm and manipulate his way through life, never facing consequences for his actions. It's time that changed. Hope flared in my chest, bright and fierce. With Elise on my side, I stood a real chance of making Derek pay for his betrayal. What did you have in mind? A slow smile spread across her face. I have some ideas, but first, there are some things you should know about my dear brother's past indiscretions. Over the next hour, Elise laid out a trail of infidelities and deceptions that stretched back years. Affairs with coworkers, flings with clients, even a drunken hookup with a stripper at his bachelor party. Each revelation was like a knife to the gut, twisting deeper with every sordid detail. I had no idea, I whispered, numb with shock and disgust. How could I have been so blind? Elise reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip strong and reassuring. He's very good at hiding his tracks. But not good enough. Not anymore. Armed with this new information and Elise's support, I threw myself into plotting Derek's comeuppance with renewed vigor. Lena was thrilled to have another ally in our corner, especially one with insider knowledge. "We need to hit him where it hurts," she declared as we pored over our growing dossier of evidence. "His reputation, his career, his precious public image. Make it so he can't show his face in this town without being haunted by his own misdeeds." I nodded grimly, a cold determination settling over me like armor. "And I know just how to do it." The plan began to take shape, as intricate and delicate as a spider's web. We would lay the trap at Derek's upcoming birthday party, a lavish affair he had planned to cement his status as a rising star at his law firm. In front of all his colleagues, friends, and family, we would expose his true colors in spectacular fashion. It was a risk, I knew. If we played our cards wrong, it could all blow up in our faces. But the thought of seeing the look on Derek's face when he realized he had been beaten at his own game was too tempting to resist. Late one night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Elise's parting words echoed in my mind. "He doesn't deserve you, Cora. He never did. It's time to show the world who you really are. A force to be reckoned with." I closed my eyes, picturing the moment of truth, the shock and outrage on Derek's face, the vindication of finally making him answer for his crimes. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. "Watch out, Derek. Your reckoning is coming, and her name is Cora Bennett." The week leading up to Derek's birthday party was a whirlwind of covert operations and meticulous planning. Elise, Lena, and I met in secret, fine-tuning every detail of our grand scheme. We compiled a dossier of evidence that laid bare Derek's web of lies and infidelities, explicit text messages, incriminating photos, even a few damning voice recordings, courtesy of Elise's PI friend. It was a veritable treasure trove of betrayal, and I couldn't wait to unleash it on the unsuspecting partygoers. Lena took charge of the technical aspects, putting together a slideshow that would expose Derek's misdeeds in humiliating fashion. She even managed to hack into his email and uncover a trail of money transfers to a secret offshore account. "Bastard's been siphoning funds for months," she spat, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Probably planning to run off with his little side piece and leave you high and dry." Rage boiled in my veins, hot and corrosive. Not if I have anything to say about it. As the party drew near, I threw myself into the role of dutiful wife, helping Derek plan the celebration with a smile on my face and vengeance in my heart. He remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, too caught up in his own ego to notice the danger signs. The night before the party, as we lay in bed, he reached for me with a lecherous grin. "How about a little pre-birthday surprise?" he purred, his hand sliding up my thigh. I fought back a shudder of revulsion and forced a coy smile. "Patience, baby. I've got something extra special planned for tomorrow night. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise." His eyes gleamed with anticipation. "I like the sound of that. You know how much I love your surprises. If only you knew," I thought grimly. The day of the party dawned bright and clear, a perfect contrast to the dark storm brewing inside me. I went through the motions of getting ready, my mind buzzing with a heady mix of nerves and exhilaration. Lena and Elise arrived early to help with the final preparations, exchanging tense smiles and meaningful looks as we worked. The air crackled with a sense of impending chaos, like the calm before a hurricane. As the first guests began to arrive, I plastered on my most charming smile and played the role of gracious hostess to perfection. Derek held court by the bar, regaling his adoring audience with tales of his latest courtroom triumphs. I watched him work the room, all smooth charm and easy confidence, and felt a swell of vicious satisfaction. "Enjoy it while you can, you smug bastard. Your reign ends tonight." The party was in full swing when Elise caught my eye from across the room, giving me a subtle nod. It was time. I made my way to the front of the room, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. "Can I have everyone's attention, please? I'd like to say a few words." A hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned to me expectantly. Derek shot me a questioning look, but I ignored him, my gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. "First of all, I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my wonderful husband," I began, my voice dripping with false sincerity. "Derek is an incredible man, successful, charming, loved by all who know him. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and Derek preened under the praise, his chest puffing out with pride. I let the moment hang for a beat before my smile turned sharp and cutting. But there's another side to Derek that most of you don't know about. A side that lies, cheats, and betrays those closest to him without a second thought. Confusion flickered across Derek's face as I spoke, quickly morphing into anger as realization began to dawn. "Cora," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. "What the hell are you doing?" I ignored him, nodding to Lena, who stood poised by the projector. "I think it's time everyone saw the real Derek Bennett. Roll the tape." The first slide flashed onto the screen behind me, and the room erupted into chaos. The projector hummed to life, casting a harsh light across the stunned faces of the partygoers. One by one, the damning slides flashed across the screen. Intimate photos of Derek and Alexis, screenshots of explicit text messages, bank statements detailing his secret transfers. Derek's face drained of color as he watched his dirty laundry being aired for all to see. His eyes darted wildly around the room, seeking an escape, but there was none to be found. "What the fuck is this?" he snarled, rounding on me with fury in his eyes. "You crazy bitch, turn it off!" I stood my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. "What's the matter, Derek? Afraid everyone will see what a lying, cheating scumbag you really are?" He lunged for me but was intercepted by Elise, who stepped smoothly into his path. "Ah, little brother, the show's not over yet." The final slide clicked into place, a giant red heart with the words, "Happy Birthday, Derek," scrawled across it in mocking cursive. The room fell silent for a beat, the tension stretching taut as a bowstring. Then the murmurs started, shocked whispers swelling to a dull roar as the truth sank in. Derek stood frozen, his fists clenched and his face twisted with impotent rage. "Derek, is this true?" A portly man in an expensive suit stepped forward, his brow furrowed in disapproval. I recognized him as Derek's boss, a senior partner at the law firm. Derek opened his mouth, a denial hot on his tongue, but the words died in his throat as he met the man's steely gaze. I can't explain," he stammered, but it was clear that no explanation would suffice. "I'm disappointed in you, Bennett." His boss said coldly, "I thought you were a man of integrity. It seems I was mistaken." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd as Derek's colleagues and clients turned their backs on him, their faces etched with disgust. He looked around wildly, searching for a friendly face, but found only condemnation. "Please, just let me explain," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation, but no one wanted to hear it. Alexis, who had been watching the scene unfold with a stricken expression, chose that moment to bolt for the door, her heels clattering on the hardwood floor. Derek called after her, but she didn't look back, vanishing into the night without a backward glance. And then it was just Derek, standing alone in the center of the room, the shattered remnants of his once charmed life scattered at his feet. I walked up to him slowly, my heels clicking on the floor like gunshots. He flinched as I drew near, shrinking away from the icy fury in my eyes. "How does it feel?" I asked softly, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "To have everything you've ever worked for, everything you've ever cared about, ripped away in an instant? To know that you've lost it all because of your own selfish, despicable actions?" "Cora, please," he whispered, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." A harsh laugh tore from my throat. "Spare me the crocodile tears, Derek. We both know you're only sorry you got caught." I leaned in close, my lips brushing his ear. "I loved you, you know. I would have done anything for you, but you threw it all away for a cheap thrill with your secretary, and now you're going to pay the price." He shuddered, a broken sob escaping his lips. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, cold and sharp as a knife's edge. "Oh, my dear husband, you have no idea what I'm capable of." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him to wallow in the ruins of his once perfect life. The trap had been sprung. The mighty Derek Bennett had fallen, and I had never felt more alive. The fallout from the party was swift and brutal. Within days, the news of Derek's disgrace had spread like wildfire through our social circles and beyond. Whispers followed him wherever he went, judgmental stares and scathing remarks dogging his every step. At work, the consequences were even more severe. His boss called him into his office the morning after the party, his face grim and his tone unforgiving. I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately, he said, sliding a sheaf of papers across the desk. The firm can't afford to be associated with this kind of scandal. You're lucky I don't fire you outright. Derek's face paled as he reached for the papers with a trembling hand. Sir, please. I can fix this. Just give me a chance to explain. His boss shook his head, his expression implacable. There's nothing to explain, Bennett. Your actions speak for themselves. Take the leave, get your shit together, and pray that this blows over. But don't expect any favors from me or anyone else at this firm. Defeated, Derek slunk out of the office like a whipped dog, his tail tucked between his legs. I watched from the shadows, a thrill of vicious satisfaction coursing through my veins. That afternoon, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate our victory. We clinked glasses of champagne, giddy with the rush of revenge fulfilled. God, did you see his face? Lena crowed, her eyes bright with malicious glee. I thought he was going to piss himself right there on the floor. Elise laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Serves him right, the arrogant prick. I've been waiting years to see him get his comeuppance. I sipped my champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. It's not over yet, ladies. There's still one more loose end to tie up. Their eyes met mine, alight with understanding. The divorce, Elise said, her voice low and serious. Are you ready for that fight? I set my glass down, my smile sharp as a blade. I was born ready. He wants to play hardball? I'll bury him. That night, I sat Derek down and laid out my terms. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his shoulders slumped and his eyes hollow. I want a divorce, I said flatly, sliding a stack of papers across the table. I've already had my lawyer draw up the paperwork. All you have to do is sign. He stared at the papers like they were a coiled snake, ready to strike. Cora, please, can't we talk about this? I know I fucked up, but I can change. I can be better. I barked a harsh laugh. Spare me the act, Derek. We both know you're not capable of change. You're a liar and a cheat, and that's all you'll ever be. He flinched as if I'd slapped him, his eyes welling with tears. I love you, Cora. Doesn't that count for anything? You don't know the meaning of the word, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. If you loved me, you never would have betrayed me the way you did. You never would have shattered our marriage like it meant nothing. He reached for me, but I recoiled, revulsion etched into every line of my face. Don't touch me. Don't ever fucking touch me again. Sighing, he picked up the pen with a shaking hand. Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we've built together? I met his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. You threw it away the moment you stuck your dick in another woman. I'm just finishing what you started. He signed the papers in silence, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I watched him coldly, feeling nothing but a grim sense of satisfaction. It was done. The final nail in the coffin of our farce of a marriage. I was free. Free from his lies, his betrayals, his poisonous presence in my life, and I had never felt more alive. The divorce proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and bitter accusations, each side fighting tooth and nail for every scrap of assets and advantage. Derek, ever the sore loser, tried every dirty trick in the book to paint me as the villain, the unstable wife who drove him into another woman's arms. But I had truth on my side, and a crack team of lawyers who ate his pathetic arguments for breakfast. In the end, the judge saw through his lies and manipulation, granting me a generous settlement and the satisfaction of watching Derek slink out of the courtroom like a beaten dog. As I walked out of the courthouse, my head held high and my divorce papers clutched tightly in my hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I was free. Lena was waiting for me on the steps, a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses in hand. Congratulations, babe, she crowed, pulling me into a fierce hug. You did it. You're officially a free woman. I laughed, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Damn right I am, and I couldn't have done it without you and Elise. I owe you both everything. We popped the champagne, the bubbles fizzing over our hands as we poured 2 generous glasses. To new beginnings, Lena said, clinking her glass against mine, and to the power of women scorned. I grinned, taking a deep sip of the effervescent liquid. It tasted like victory, like vindication, like the start of a whole new chapter. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment, a sunny loft in the heart of downtown that felt like a haven after the oppressive gloom of the house I'd shared with Derek. I poured my energy into my work, taking on new clients and projects with a renewed sense of purpose. And slowly but surely, I started to heal. The pain of Derek's betrayal still stung, a dull ache that flared up in the quiet moments, but it no longer consumed me. I had survived, and I was stronger for it. One day, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Derek on the street. He looked haggard, his suit rumpled, and his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity for the broken man he had become. But then he opened his mouth, and any shred of sympathy I might have felt evaporated like mist in the sun. "Cora," he said, his voice rough and slurred. "I miss you. I made a mistake. Can't we just talk about this?" I stared at him incredulously, a harsh laugh bubbling up in my throat. "Are you serious right now? After everything you've done, you have the nerve to ask for another chance?" He reached for me, his eyes pleading. "I still love you, Cor. I know I fucked up, but we can fix this. We can start over." I slapped his hand away, my face twisting with disgust. "You don't get to call me that anymore. You don't get to pretend like we can just erase the past and start fresh. You made your choices, Derek. Now you have to live with them." I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "You ruined my life, you vindictive bitch. I hope you're happy now." Slowly, I pivoted back to face him, my eyes narrowed to icy slits. "I am happy, Derek. Happy to be rid of you and your toxic bullshit. Happy to finally be free of the lies and the cheating and the gaslighting. You didn't ruin my life, Derek. You just made me realize how strong I am without you." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, my head high and my heart full. I didn't look back. That night, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate my new life. We clinked glasses of red wine and traded stories of triumph over adversity, of women who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to build something beautiful and strong. As I looked around at their smiling faces, I felt a surge of gratitude and love, so powerful it nearly took my breath away. These women, my sisters in arms, had been my rock through the darkest of times. With them by my side, I knew I could weather any storm. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise. I had no idea what it held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. Because I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high and my heart unbroken. I was Cora fucking Bennett, and I was unbreakable.